Welcome, everybody, to the JerryRigged podcast. My name is Jerry, and this is where we're going to talk about all things business analytics, technology, marketing, Salesforce. And today is going to be kind of a fun, laid-back episode. We're not going to get super deep into the hardcore learning. So audience participation is part of this show. We want you to chat in your questions, chat in comments, even if they're snide jokes about either one of us, including my guest today, and or I don't know, maybe there's something about Pardot that drives you absolutely insane. I know it drives me insane. We're going to talk all about that stuff and learn some stuff as well. My guest today is a guy by the name of Steven Pricer, and I'm going to tell you how I know this guy because he's a regular on the LinkedIn rounds, and him and I have bantered back and forth. And one day he said he can out-talk me, and so I gave him a challenge. So I think I can out-talk you. And it just so happened that he's a Salesforce administrator and been in the ecosystem a long time, and so have I. So we're going to have some fun today. Make sure you chat in your questions and comments. We want to hear from you. Also, right off the bat, we want to hear where you're located. Where are you from? Steven is in Mississippi, and I am in Chandler, Arizona. So let's hear from you.
Yeah.
This is the JerryRigged podcast, your no-nonsense knowledge base for business technology, marketing, and analytics. And now your host, Jerry Serstead.
So I implemented my first Salesforce org in 2004. So I think I might have Steven beat here, but we're going to find out. And when I implemented this org, I knew nothing about it. I just point and clicked. There was no trailhead. There was no instructions. Didn't come with an instruction booklet. I just point and clicked until the org did what we wanted it to do. And so that was my first foray. So my guy here today, my guest, his name is Steven Pricer. And Steven is a Salesforce consultant. And we're going to introduce him to you guys so you can meet him and learn more about him. Hey, what's up, Steven?
Hey, how you doing, Jerry? Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, all good, all good. So tell us, Steven, how did you get into Salesforce? How long have you been in it? And were you an accidental admin? How did that process go?
Well, it's very funny. 16 years military veteran. I was in the U.S. Army. And then in 2017, my younger brother, he's been in the ecosystem for, I believe, about 13 years now. And he was telling me, hey, you need to get into Salesforce. You need to get into Salesforce. So I dabbled a little bit at that time. And I was like, it's not for me. It's not for me. So I decided to start my own school to teach English as a second language. I moved over to Morocco. And while I was over there, that's when I decided, hey, I needed to get a little bit more into it. After a couple of years, that was back in 2018 when I decided it wasn't for me. But then in 2021, when I met my wife, got married, then was like, hey, yep, I'm going to get into Salesforce. And 2021 is when I decided to do my deep dive and get to Salesforce going into 2022. And that's when I got my first certification. And
nice. So
like what you said, you got into it in 2004. So you definitely have 18 years on me.
Okay. Well, I wasn't in the ecosystem the entire time nonstop. I was kind of in and out. I've always been around marketing, CRMs, technology. I always love using tools to get stuff done. And so, yeah, I've either implemented and or used and or administrated HubSpot, Zoho, Sugar CRM, Salesforce, a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm not one of those that drinks the Salesforce Kool-Aid 100%. Salesforce is a great product for specific businesses and specific needs. But lately I've been doing more implementations with HubSpot. And if you play around with HubSpot, that's some really cool software.
Yeah, I have played around with HubSpot. I've actually played with HubSpot with a few clients, and HubSpot is cool. I do like it. The automations are very easy to play around with HubSpot. Extremely easy to plug and play. But I do have to say they're not as dynamic as Salesforce. But that makes it easier to do it with HubSpot. Now, as we know that with Salesforce, though, that's one thing they always caution you on is, yes, it is extremely dynamic, but the complexity of it, though, can lead you down into the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely abhor Salesforce flows. Absolutely hate them.
Well, I can tell you, you're not the only one there. I mean, I know just these between, I would say, last Thursday, Friday, I went ahead and spent probably those 2 days working on a Salesforce flow to figure out that I don't need to use a Salesforce flow. I could do it with formula.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I've always been kind of a non-coder, almost to the point of rebellion. And so when you start, formulas are not too bad. But what, here's what flows feel. Okay. So I've done a lot of automations in HubSpot, a lot of automations in Active Campaign, which is a little bit like HubSpot, but hasn't been around as long, is not as robust. And they both have drag and drop automation user interfaces. Mm-hmm. Now, Salesforce feels to me like a bunch of coders got in a room to create something that's very drag and drop. And then about halfway through, they got bored and said, they'll figure it out. They'll figure out the rest of it. And because when you first get into flows, you're like, oh, wow, look at this. Drag and drop. Nope, sorry. You're going to drag and drop, and then a window's going to pop up. Then you're not going to know what to do.
I would agree, yes, and kind of disagree, because if you were one of those people who you absolutely abhor any type of code, right? Then yes, that's why I agree with you 100%. If you know what you like and you know what you don't like, then yeah. Well, for me, I'm one of those people to where, yeah, I like to do some coding. So then that's where, I like the flexibility and everything where it comes to the flows with Salesforce. Right. Then that gives you more of the freedom there, Yes. But again, that's where you like what you like and what you don't like, and I think that's where it comes down to the skinny of it, because like you said, when it comes to some of the other CRMs, HubSpot is probably one of the other CRMs that I've mainly dealt with besides Salesforce. And of course, as a consultant, you're going to have a multiple amount of clients that have other CRMs that are coming to Salesforce. Yes. And so you are going to learn about the other CRMs as well. And, but I would definitely have to agree that HubSpot flows are a lot easier, especially like what you said when it comes to marketing. Because when it comes to marketing, this is something that I feel that people forget, is the attribution aspect. Because a lot of times they're saying, okay, hey, we have our campaigns out there, we're doing this, we're getting our information in, but they forget about attribution. And this is where the automation comes into play, is what are you doing with that data as it comes in? Are you just using it for reports? I mean, but you have to do something with that. And that's where the flows are very important. When you're coming in with those leads, with those qualified leads.
I think ultimately it probably starts with the use case. And I say that because, okay, let's take all businesses in America, or the world for that matter, and let's put them in let's say for simplicity, 3 groups. You got small business, small to medium-sized business, large business. Then, of course, there's probably 4 groups. The enterprise. Yep. So, when you're at the enterprise level and you're marketing to consumers, you're probably wanting to use Salesforce Marketing Cloud. It's got 18 billion bells and whistles. It's robust. You can bring in a bajillion social channels and advertising channels. But when you get down to just small business and even small to medium-sized business, I think that 80% of the time, 90% of what you need are just basic flows that HubSpot can do, ActiveCampaign can do, and some of the free software that's off the shelf can do. And that extra stuff that Salesforce has in flows, if you really analyze it, you probably will never need it. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with you there. I agree with you. And definitely in that aspect, when you're looking to that small to medium-sized business. And with that aspect there, we would have to say that I would go up to maybe 20 to 30 personnel within that business. But once you start getting larger than that, then we're going to have to say I would switch from something of those smaller CRMs into something like Salesforce, because that's where you're going to have something more dynamic. But with that smaller to medium-sized business, that's when those HubSpot, the smaller CRMs, definitely work. They would work for the larger, medium-sized company to enterprise as well, but not as effectively.
Well, I think, and here's the other piece. Okay, you got all these different groups and company sizes, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have you might have a small to medium-sized business. Let's say they have 80 employees, right? Mm-hmm. And out of 80 employees, they got 20 salespeople, and they're very sales B2B intensive. And so 80% of their efforts are in sales and 20% are in marketing, where you have other companies where 80% of their efforts are marketing. And then basically they do such a phenomenal job marketing and their product is so good. Their salespeople are really more order takers. So they don't have to necessarily track opportunities.
Yeah. Well, yes. Now, we're also, if we could solve, and now this is just you and me talking here.
Yeah.
But if we could solve the ultimate problem here of the sales and marketing issue of them actually working together as well.
Yes.
Right. That's a different issue, within just business itself, because typically, ideally we would think that sales and marketing would be, the perfect marriage, they would work really well together. But unfortunately, they fight like step siblings, it's just the way it is. I mean, the one's blaming the other, but really they should be working together, really well in that aspect. But unfortunately they don't. And a lot of times systems are designed where they should work well together, but it's just because of the human aspect, if you will, they don't, and now one thing I do want to say about automation though, is one thing I like about Salesforce is that Salesforce has come up with the automation to where you can have a flow inside of a flow. So that way, and this is one thing I do like that is, so if you have, for instance, that flow set up to where it's your primary engine, if you will, you can set up and something goes wrong, then you can troubleshoot inside that flow. You can troubleshoot that primary flow part within that. And then you don't have to mess with the whole flow altogether.
Yes.
Which is significantly different than the other CRMs. And that is something that could save you a lot of time. Now, it does take time to set it up, but that could save you a lot of time in the long run when something goes wrong, after a field has changed, after something else has changed, whether you've changed administrators or something else going down the long.
I think a lot of it comes down to like how fancy does the client need to get or want to get. Some are like, if you hit 50% of what we think we need, we're good. And then other clients sit around, drinking coffee for 20 hours straight, trying to think of some new widget, some new functionality, something new and different. Sometimes you'll get a sales manager in the room and they're just rattling off, every nice to have known to mankind, which obviously keeps us in work.
Yep.
But usually what I'm trying to do is I try to push my client like, hey, let's take industry norms, industry fundamentals. You know, if a prospect fills out a form, what do we want to happen next? You know, do we want it to go straight to sales? Do we want it pre-qualified? Obviously, we want to send them a thank you note, a thank you email, and then maybe put them on a drip campaign of some sort. And, you know, I don't know, you know, when you get into bigger companies, you know, the complexity just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and finally gets to a point where you have to have something like Salesforce flows, right?
Yep.
But if your company is very sales oriented, I always recommend Salesforce Sales Cloud, of course, right out of the gate. And then as far as their marketing back end, Salesforce works really good with HubSpot. I mean, they have almost native integration, you know, for all the fundamentals. Because when a lead comes in, what do you need in Sales Cloud? You need a name, phone number, company name, email. That's kind of about it.
Yep. And I would definitely agree with you there on multiple aspects, because on the Salesforce side, within their marketing, they tend to be, for one, more expensive, right? But just within the Salesforce core, if we want to take a look at Pardot, the Pardot account engagement. I remember I think it was right around the time I got my Pardot specialist. I think it was right after, within days after I got my Pardot specialist, they changed it to account engagement.
Right.
And I even remember, I think I was doing an implementation and I was looking for the tabs, going across. And I was looking for like Pardot campaign, and everything as I'm going across, and I couldn't find it. And I'm like, what's going on? And it was the day of the change to where it was account engagement, And in my professional marketing opinion, and I'm sure Salesforce knows more about this than I do, but I think that everyone who's been around is going to always call it Pardot. Exactly.
And I think they should have kept the name. I think I get why they were trying to lean that way. But first of all, account engagement is way too long. It's a mouthful. You can't fit it on nothing. It's hard to fit on tabs. So how about call it, AE Pardot or, I could think of a million other variations where they could have kept the word Pardot in there, and everyone who's been calling it Pardot for like 15 years can continue to call it Pardot.
Oh, we could continue talking about naming conventions. Even when we were talking about the Lightning app builder, right? It doesn't build apps. Right. It's an app manager, but anyway. So, but going back to the Pardot aspect of it, even Salesforce campaigns handles campaigns better than Pardot campaigns.
I have a total love-hate relationship with Pardot. Absolutely. Like their landing page builder is, garbage. And then they tried to fix it and it was worse garbage. And so, I've never used that drag and drop interface. None of that. I build them on a drag and drop app and then kick out some HTML and CSS and then just copy and paste it.
Yep. And then again, this is coming from where you're talking about is if you don't like coding at all, it is heavily upon knowing HTML and CSS, and you don't have to know that, like you said, they do have a builder to where you don't have to know HTML, CSS at all. Right. But it helps. And if you do know it, then, of course, that's going to be the ultimate when it comes to Pardot.
Yeah, school marketer. Software coding is for the software guys, the developers. I've been around HTML for 25 years. I understand what it is, how it works, but I don't write HTML. I just use tools. And now with the advent of AI, it's going to be even easier. So Alice says programming is 10% writing code and 90% understanding why it's not working.
And you know what? I think that actually goes to, that's 100% right there, because, it's easy to go in. Like I just said, I'm working on a formula right now. And then that's one nice thing is with Salesforce, they give you all kinds of different formula examples. And then even while you're working on that, there has to be, if you're going from one object to another object, there has to be some kind of relationship in between that. So there has to be a relationship when you're trying to work within that. So you have to know why it's not working. So working within formulas, working within the code, you have to have that understanding there. And I think that's also when it comes to Salesforce, when it comes to the flows, when it comes to everything there, this is where people get confused. And this is something I think that's the most significant difference between what we do within Salesforce, how we take the certifications and everything versus, let's use a Microsoft certification as an example, or even HTML, CSS certification as an example. When we take our certifications, on not how to do or how to complete a Salesforce task. It's about why, right?
Yes.
And that's a big difference when you're taking a different technology certification. A different technology certification is on how to do it. That's all they care about.
Well, have you ever worked with developers? If you tell them to do, hey, I need ABC, they will do ABC and not one thing more. And they'll sit there and twiddle their thumbs until you give them a new assignment, a new sprint. And I'm always talking to developers like, hey, guys, give me some input. What do you think? What do you think would be best practice? Do you have any ideas about how we can make this smoother, run better for users? Because I don't know, maybe I'm just old school too much. I'm a firm believer in software was designed and is supposed to be designed to solve problems and make life easy. That's the purpose of software. And so when I'm in Salesforce or Pardot and I'm clicking, I'm dragging, I'm dropping, error messages are popping up, or I click on something and then it says, oh, well, you haven't set this other thing up. So then you go set that up. And in the middle of setting that up, it says, oh, well, you can't set this up because there's something else that you had set up ahead of time. And then pretty soon you're running in these circles and you realize you burned up an entire day just trying to perform one task. Where good software, you click it, it works.
Yep. And this again goes back to the complexity issue and also knowing how your software operates. And again, I think this comes to the fact of repetition. And again, something that I like that Salesforce does with their DevWorks is they give you the free access to it, and then you're able to use it and do it over and over again. But I do agree with you because we can look at it doing vice versa as well. If you want to delete something, right? If it's tied up into something, and it could be quite tedious after you've created something, tied it in, whether you've created an object in a field and then you have it within a flow, or you have a validation role tied to it, whatever. Then you go to delete it and then you can't, because then you have to take it away from this, and you have to take it away from this, and you have to do this. And then, someone else may have gotten involved, and then you're like, okay, crap. And this even comes down to the aspect of even users, right? You just have to deactivate the user, because they may be tied into this aspect and this aspect and this aspect. And it gets so complex in that way.
Well, what about that transition from classic to lightning? It's like, shoot me.
Well, it's funny that you say that there, because from when I first started studying in 2018 and then took that break and started studying again in late 2021. Yeah. It was a completely different show.
Oh, I know.
Right? Yeah, it was a completely different show. I actually started all over again because it went from me studying classic into a little bit of intro of lightning into just straight lightning. And I was like,
meanwhile, behind the scenes, Salesforce is still trying to figure out what they're doing with lightning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Let's see. I got a couple questions for Steven. Let's see. Let's jump into the psyche of a Salesforce admin real quick. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could share a story where you had to think outside the box to solve a Salesforce problem. This is like a job interview.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see here. Ooh.
Stephen, tell me about a time when ... No doubt about that. You put me on a spot there. No,
it's always funny when you ask a question like that, how your mind goes blank. But there's all kinds of them there. So, well, let's go ahead and use this as an example.
Okay.
So a client wants information going from an account going onto a contact, right? And there is a junction object in between those two. So we know we can solve that through a flow. We were just talking about that.
Yep.
And then within that aspect, then I was looking at that. Okay, well, we can obviously do that through a flow. We have to have a relationship in between there. As I mentioned before, there's an junction object, so then you can obviously talk in between there. And this was somewhat complex because what I needed to do first within this flow, after, like I said before, I ended up spending 2 days working on this flow. There was a pick list on the junction object. So based off of the account, there's a board status on the account, and then there is the status shows up on the contact, controlled by the junction object. Now, within that, we were having issues. The pick list, we could say it's either a yes or a no. That's going to show up on the contact. Now, we were having multiple issues, and you're going to have one of two accounts that's going to show up on the contact. So instead of, after 2 days of playing around with this flow, what I decided to do was actually, with some help of my mentor, decided to do a formula. But within that formula, I actually had to do some roll-up summaries to count how many times that pick list is showing up, did some checkboxes, and then counted those checkboxes, and then actually did a formula so that way it can actually show up what the current status is of. So because some people could be yes, or they could be no from the past. We want what their current status is. Is it a yes? Because it could be yes right now.
Yeah.
Or they could have been a no from the past.
Oh, right. Gosh.
So we want their current status, what it was right there. So we ended up going with a formula, with that one, because it was proving that, like what we were talking about before, the flow would have been too complex and potentially in the future could have been broken too easily.
Yeah, I'm big on data. I try to force users to, use pick lists. No free form data unless we're talking like notes, what are your thoughts on something? Okay, go ahead. But I force everybody to use that. So there was a time when I did this one of my earlier implementations. It was a home building company, and they had about 4 salespeople. Mm-hmm. There was, pardon the term, 2 old guys and then 2 young guys. The young guys, when it comes to technology, tend to be a little more adaptive, a little more flexible. The old guys are rocking sticky notes, Post-it notes around their computer screen. Those were all their leads, right? Mm-hmm. And then when their lead moved to the next phase, one guy would take it off the computer and he would put it on his desk in a very particular spot. So he knew that guy was interested, right? And so when I was working with the owner of the company, he was, Jerry, I'm really concerned. I just don't want to spend all this money on Salesforce and implementation. And then, my guys don't want to use the software. I don't want to be a jerk and, threaten their job in order to use it. I said, well, I have some ideas. Don't worry about it. So what I did was my plan was kind of a twofold. It was initially just really pound into them all the benefits, how their life's going to be easier. We can automate follow-ups. And so when I got all the guys in a room, the two older guys were in there like this. Mm-hmm. No, I ain't doing this. I ain't doing it. You're not going to make me. Forget it. The young guys were like, well, hey, show us what it's all about. I said, guys, look, you're already using Outlook, right? Okay. You're already using calendar, sending emails. This is a software platform that is like that, but on steroids. And here's the beauty of it. A, you're going to be able to make more money. B, you're going to be able to spend less time worrying about if this lead is good or this lead is bad. And while you're on the phone talking to prospective clients, behind the scenes, automatically, there's emails going out and there's things happening that will keep you and your name and the company name in front of those people. So then I created a lead object. And I remember on the first meeting, I stripped that thing down to almost nothing. Like name, phone number, email, address. And I said, see, that's it. It literally will take you about 30 seconds to type this in. And now the system takes over and helps you. And then I started adding more fields as time went on. And then one guy was just not following through. He didn't, he wasn't vocal about it, but he just would not use the system. And so I told the owner, I said, well, you've talked to him. I've talked to him. We've given him all the benefits. So here's what you do. You tell them that all commissions by payroll are generated off the numbers within Salesforce. So if there's no numbers, there's no clients, you're not tracking anything, then there'll be no commissions. There's nothing to calculate off of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That quick.
Oh, 100%. At a previous client, there were a bunch of accountants, and they were very similar and that same aspect. And so what the organization did is they did something very similar in the aspect that their bonuses were tied to the accuracy and the information input into Salesforce. And then, so one of my responsibilities was to train the accountants on how to use Salesforce.
Nice.
And one of the first things that I had to do was not only look at their org, but also find certain things that, like, for instance, they were using campaigns to do mass emails. So they had a mass amount of unnecessary campaign records just for mass emails.
They were doing it for every email?
For every time to do mass emails. So like if they wanted to send an email for thought leadership, they would just do a whole bunch of campaigns instead of, and they turned off the functionality under deliverability for under the emails, under the settings, to do your mass emails under the contacts. I was like, what'd you do that for? I just don't understand that. Which ironically, trying to find how to turn that back on, I mean, it took me forever to find the settings to be able to turn that back on.
Right.
You can find all kinds of things on the which it's really easy to find now. It's under email deliverability to turn that back on and off. But it just blew my mind that they did that to send mass emails. So we got that fixed, and then we did a bunch of training. And what do you know? The implementation of it after that, I mean, there was some kickback, but overall it went pretty smooth. But when your bonuses are tied to the accuracy of the information there, it's very imperative. The other thing I want to mention too, something that I have found to be extremely important, and I would say if there's any time to beat a dead horse, and I find this to be more true than anything else that is lacking, documentation.
It's like going to the dentist.
Yeah.
You got to do it, but you put it off. I
mean, I'm getting better. I am definitely getting better. I'm with CRM Navigators, and Haley Tuller, Dustin Cole, fantastic when it comes to documentation. Probably, I would have to say, some of the best consultants I have ever seen when it comes to documentation. So right here, I could show you my notepad right here. I don't use my notepad as often because I am documenting everything now on the computer. I have a note open. I am documenting. So that way, everything is transparent. Everybody on the team can see my notes, even they're my personal notes, and that's fine. Because if I make a mistake, someone on the team could see, hey, you know what? You went ahead and did this. You went ahead and did this. That documentation is so imperative. And it is, even when they're saying, hey, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing this, whether it's going to be doing a Loom or any kind of video recording while they're giving you directions on how to do something, whether it is you're just typing something up on a Google Doc or something, so that way it could be shared. Most importantly, having an ongoing client documentation. Something else I talk about with documentation, one of my personal pet peeves, and it doesn't matter what CRM you're using. Make sure there's a description box. There's a description box for everything. It's imperative. Fill it in. If you've noticed on Trailblazer, on the Trailheads, they're actually teaching, everybody now to fill in that description box.
Yes.
Remember when they didn't do that anymore? Right? They're actually teaching that now.
Well, it's easy to get in a hurry and, you're trying to get something implemented. So you're kind of flying through and your brain's locked on, like, how do I get this thing to the end so it works? And then all along, you're not leaving any breadcrumbs so you can find your way back.
I'm going to tell you a quick story, and this is how important it is, why in the Army we have a phrase, train as we fight, right? So they discovered, I was a medic, okay? There's this thing that if you have an unconscious patient, you come up on an unconscious patient, it's called a nasopharyngeal. Little tube you put inside their nose, secures the airway, right? So when I was a baby medic, what we used to do is it comes in a little plastic case or whatever. We used to just tape it on the patient's face, right? Because, I could be a pretend patient and we'd just tape it right there saying, okay, we put it in. Okay. Well, then when it came down to the real life scenario, they found that medics were actually just taping it on the patient's face instead of putting it in the nose.
What?
Because that's the way they trained. Yeah. I'm not kidding. Right?
Okay, that's crazy.
And they were like, wait a second. Why did you do that? Well, that's the way they trained. So then they changed the training, right? Because it's just a little plastic tube. You put some gel on it. You insert it in the nose. So anything you could actually do on the patient, they changed the training to where you did. So they started inserting it. It's not comfortable, right? It hurts a little bit. Sometimes you get a bloody nose, but it's not going to kill you. So that's what they started doing. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so the point is you train as you fight. So if you're training and you need to put that little documentation, what is this field? What's it for? What's this automation for? Put it in the description, right? You are not going to be the only person there. You're going to be leading. Someone else is coming in behind you. They need to know what this is for. It doesn't matter if it's a simple field, an automation, whatever it is. If there's a description box, documentation is imperative.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Here, I'm going to take a quick plug here. I just released a book called How to Podcast. I'm a former radio broadcaster and radio producer. And so I spent a few weeks here writing this book and just released it on Amazon. So if it's something that interests you, check it out. I'm on Amazon. Just put in my name or How to Podcast, and usually it'll pop up. So that's my little plug for the day. Back to the documentation. So last year, I got a role for about 8 months at a company. And it's funny, when you get into a company and you're the only admin and they have about 100 users, the information and the history tends to come piecemeal. Mm-hmm. A little bit here, a little bit there. And you're like, can I get all the information? I want to understand where this org has been. So anyway, come to find out, this org had the company been using it for 12 years. So they've been with it for quite a while. And I also found out that over the past 12 years, they had probably 12 different admins. Wow. And interspersed through the admins, one admin would leave or get laid off or whatever. And then they would hand off the org to a gal that was, kind of a power user. And she would go in and change all this stuff. And then somebody else would come in. Anyway, so I come along and I'm going through this org and I'm looking under the leads object and there's like over 5,000 leads in there. And I'm kind of looking at it going, okay, something's weird about this. Why is there 5,000 leads? And like half of them were actual requests from their website from people that said, I would like to get more information about your company.
Yep.
Also known as a lead.
Yep.
So anyway, after doing a little more digging, what I found out was none of the salespeople are using the lead object. So then I go to the sales manager and he says, oh yeah, we don't use that. We don't like that. I said, well, so what's happening with these leads as they're coming in off of LinkedIn and the website and all these social media channels? It's like, I don't know. Like, you're joking, right? You're actually kidding me. This is the April Fool's joke, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you guys have 5,000 leads in there that in theory have never been followed up on.
Yep.
Yeah, well, we're not using the leads object. I said, okay, so when a new lead comes in, what do you do with it? Oh, we just create an account. Okay. So now you have a database of 7,000 records in your accounts, of which half of them or more don't want to do business with you and never will do business with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because you didn't kind of pre-qualify them before you created an account and or an opportunity. They didn't care. They didn't want to use the leads object. So basically it was kind of like I wanted to, my DNA wanted me to clean up the data, but I couldn't because they didn't want nothing changed. They didn't want nothing delete. Don't delete nothing, Jerry. Don't delete anything. Don't have anything. Just leave it the way it is. It's like, all right. I guess you can just pay me to kind of babysit this org, and that's what I'll do.
Exactly. Well, and this is the interesting thing too, is as a consultant, and this that a lot of times we do what the client wants, and I mean that's what I tell people too. I help. For the lack of better terms, people new to the ecosystem get their Salesforce certification, Salesforce Steven.
Yep.
And that's something I tell them. I say, remember, whether you're an administrator, essentially no matter what your role is, again, something that's phenomenal within Salesforce is that you're not the boss. We're not. As the what's it? Silence of the Lambs. It does what it's told. Right? We do the recommendations. Hey, this is the best practices. But it is the way it is. I had a client who was initially was wanted Pardot. Ended up foregoing Pardot. But we're like, hey, let's take a look at your Salesforce org. And then my job was to help clean up their Salesforce org in all their accounts, contacts, leads, opportunities. They just their fields were just a complete mess. I was able to help get their page layout taken care of, their record page layout taken care of, everything. But I had to be very careful because they were running a hybrid version, and this was before my time, but the way it was explained to me is when Classic was upgrading to Lightning, you could upgrade parts of it, and it was from 2015, and you were able to you were able to create opportunities directly. I think it was opportunities directly from leads without converting it.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, wait a second. That's not possible. And so then as we looked into it, he never updated. He never fully upgraded anything. So as I'm working in this org, and he specifically said, don't update anything. They liked everything the way it was. So
gee whiz.
For one, the boss was like, okay, hey, we have to contact Salesforce just in case anything breaks that we didn't do it. That this is an org that really needs to be updated, but, the client didn't want it updated. We didn't update it, so we did what the client wanted. And, as consultants, we can always recommend, but, we do what the client wants. And that's the most important thing. So like what you said, you were paid to go ahead and, babysit the org, make sure that the org, it continues to run.
Well, if you have DNA like me, which is slightly ADHD, part of your DNA is to make things run faster, smoother, simpler. And it just gets under your skin when you're not allowed to do that. And then, the old saying, you can take a horse to the river, but you can't make him drink.
Yep.
So if you got a client that just won't drink, then, hey, just turn all your DNA down.
Exactly.
Be bored out of your mind, get your paycheck, and move on. That's all you can do.
Exactly. And then sometimes in those rare cases, let go of the client. Those I believe to be probably more rare than anything else.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time you're able to talk to the client, show them what's best for them. If they don't want it, that's fine. No, not a problem, and then you're able to get them, where they want to be. I think the most important thing is to be able to, this is sometimes what I believe some people may get wrong. Sometimes you have to give up a little bit of your work, at your own cost to be able to show what's best for the client.
Yes.
And then some people aren't willing to do that. But if you're willing to do that, you give up that a little bit, show what's best for the client. They are going to love you for it.
What clients I love are the ones that are like, well, Jerry, you're the expert. You just tell us what you think we need to do. I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah.
You guys want something better, and I'm going to deliver that. And those are the kind of folks that I end up, doing extra work and not charging them for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Those are the ones you definitely want to bend over backwards for.
Yeah.
100%.
Now, you do some training, right?
Yes, I love to train. I love to train.
So don't you got a YouTube channel or LinkedIn page or something?
I do. Salesforce Steven. That is, it's Salesforce Steven, exactly how it sounds. I also abbreviate it SF Steven. Yes, exactly. Cool. And I do primarily training right now for Salesforce admin certification. I do it all absolutely for free. It is just something that I enjoy doing. It is nothing that I do. I don't charge any money for it or anything. Eventually, I'm in the process of actually redoing all of my slides. I want to do a little bit more of an in-depth study for it. And again, my goal is just to help out. I've had a lot of people help me out. I like to help other people out. There are phenomenal resources out there too, as well. And then, something I wanted to mention too, one of the reasons why I like doing this, one of the reasons why I like Salesforce is, as a matter of fact, if you I don't even remember what my channel is here. Give me 1 second and I'll pull it up.
If you want, I can also probably pull it up.
Okay.
It's on YouTube, and just search for Salesforce Steven.
Correct.
Let's see here. Salesforce Steven. And there you are. There's your channel.
Yep.
Here, I'll share that out.
I greatly appreciate that.
No, it's okay.
But one thing I love about Salesforce HANA, and one thing I've always said about any position that you may have is every job out there, you're going to have, things that you don't like about it. And it's about how you're compensated. But what I like about Salesforce HANA is the people, right? Not only do you have multiple positions that you can have, right? You could be a consultant, you could be an administrator, an architect, a business analyst. You could do many different things. But it's the people within the ecosystem that I think is the best thing about Salesforce. And
yeah, I'm with you on that. It is a pretty tight-knit group. I must agree. Man, you got 66 videos on there. That's pretty cool.
Yes. One thing, something else I find to be pretty cool is I have, you can see actually 1.1 subscribers.
Yep.
And my average video length is about an hour. Now, one thing I did start doing here that I haven't done in the past is I'm starting to edit my videos better, trying to streamline them better. Hey, look, there's me with my beard.
Yeah, I was going to say, you rocking a beard there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was, I miss that beard.
That's funny.
But yeah, I'm trying to get my videos better streamlined, better edited to where they won't be that full hour. Get out a bunch of those spaces. I like to ask a lot of questions when I'm teaching my videos. Try to get a lot of participation in there. Try to get people thinking. It's just not a simple of, hey, here's this. I want more participation in there. But I think that's also part of my teaching background. I did teach for close to 5 years.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah. English as a second language. Yeah. I taught English as a second language for 5 years.
Well, so, back to this donate free paid thing. So I did that for about 4 months. I was getting hordes and hordes of job interviews, and everybody's asking me how you doing it. And, you get these folks on LinkedIn who drop a post like, I've sent out 1,000 resumes and I can't even get one call back and blah, blah, blah. And you go to their LinkedIn profile and you're like, yeah, that's why. Because your LinkedIn profile is on a scale of 1 to 10 is pushing about a 2.5. And so I started having these, quick half an hour, 1 hour little Zoom sessions on Zoom video with folks for nothing. And then my wife is like, you're having all these meetings with people. Are we making any money? Are we generating any revenue for rent, which is due on the 1st? So I went ahead and set up a page with, it's called, what is it called? Topmate.io. TOPMATE.io. And it just allows you to, essentially get something, for your dough. And I've had a few customers that have paid, and I also got a bunch of stuff in there for consulting and, podcast production and, building out somebody's, do a Salesforce implementation, build them a website all at the same time. So it's kind of nice. They can go in here and they can schedule it, and it goes on your calendar. Then they can just pay up front, and then, we're off and running. So something you might want to think about, even if it's just, a token amount of money. And I say this because there's one thing I've learned over the years is the old saying, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yep.
And I tell you what, I've been burned that way about 1,000 times. And I have to keep slapping my own hand because I enjoy helping people like you do. And, like one lady, she wanted a logo. She couldn't afford it. She needed it for her business. And so I designed a really cool logo and spent some time on it. And I was just going to give it to her. And she looked at it and says, no, I don't like that. Just forget it. And then I realized I just burned up 20 hours of my time designing this cool logo for her. And she didn't want nothing to do with it. So that's when I'm like, okay, it's time to rethink things here a little bit.
Nope, I understand. And, something that I think that, and this is something I tell people when, like you said, when they're talking about, hey, there's, I've applied for so many jobs and this, and like you said, with their LinkedIn profile. And I'm like, I need to update my banner. That's one thing I need to update. I'll probably update a couple of things myself. But, nowadays with resumes, employers may take, 30 seconds to a minute to take a look at your resume.
Yes.
They'll take 2 to 5 minutes to take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Fascinating.
I send out resumes and apply for jobs maybe 10% of the time. And the other 90% of the time, recruiters are calling me off of my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
So, I see people that don't even have a headshot uploaded. They don't, their profile banner is the default banner that LinkedIn just gives you when you set up your account. And Like one guy, he had 3 jobs listed under an experience, but his top most recent job was called I Need a Job.
Yep.
And I'm like, nobody's going to give you the time of day, let alone give you a job or a job interview. Like they go there and they just like, well, this guy does not take anything serious, doesn't take his job hunting serious. He's not serious about the field he's in or, the fact that he's a Salesforce administrator or nothing. You can tell those people that are really into it, that are plugged into the ecosystem, because their whole profile just lives and breathes Salesforce.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. And not only that, people also have to realize, I could tell you that, I'm with Navigators now. And over this last year, I should have kept count, but I don't know how many CEOs I've met through how many job interviews I've met. It is a tough market right now.
Yes.
And it is about, for the amount of people that are interviewing, it's not necessarily about only your qualifications. People forget about that. You're on a team. They want to make sure that you are operating and you are working well within that team.
Yes.
It's about your personality too. And just because you weren't selected doesn't mean you have a bad personality. They just like someone else a little better.
Yes. I've had since over the past 4.5 months, I've had over 60 interviews. First, second, third, fourth, technical, 6 people on a panel, on site. Most of them were on Teams or Zoom. And there's some things that happen after you've been through about 60 interviews. You learned how to interview. And now my confidence level is way up. I know what I know. I know what I'm here to deliver. I know that I'm a hard worker. I have a good work ethic, and I know that I'm going to give the right employer a good job. And so I go into it with that confidence. And, if they like me, cool. If they don't, they don't, move on to the next one. So
exactly.
Just jump in there and interview. Just go in there and bomb about 5 times in a row. That'll give you thick skin, and you'll walk away and you'll take notes and you'll get better and better. Pretty soon you'll be able to do good, solid job interviews in your sleep.
Yep, exactly. And then you also have to keep your chin up. And I know these numbers are probably higher, but I remember when I started looking for a job last year, in the middle of last year, the numbers were roughly about 100,000 people within our job field, right, within our career field. And this year, from what I understand, they're closer to around 400,000 people. Wow. So it's getting tighter, right? So it's more competitive. You have to invest in yourself. The time, I think when the last time I updated my LinkedIn, I spent a day just updating my LinkedIn.
You have to.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're not even talking about the time you spend in updating your resume for every position that you want to apply for, right? If you're applying for a consultancy, make sure your resume is for a consultant. If you're applying for an admin position, make sure your resume is for an admin. So on and so forth, business analyst, all that. On your LinkedIn profile, it's all about keywords. Here's one thing too that I see a lot of, and I always try to encourage people to, stick your neck out a little bit, be a little bit risky. Some people think they have to go through Talent Stacker or some school, then they got to get the certification, and then they have to get 2 years of experience before they apply for the job that they really want. I say, nah, if you get the gist of it, just interview. You'll get a job at some point, and then the first week or 2, you'll feel like a fish out of water. Then on your 3rd or 4th week, you'll be Googling and using ChatGPT and Trailhead to solve problems. And after a month or 2, you're just going to be another person on the team. And the beautiful thing about working remotely is you don't have somebody breathing down your neck, all day long every day. Yep. And see, this is where I use Talent Stacker, and I like, those tools, but I say apply for the jobs, get on LinkedIn, show yourself off, promote yourself through the process.
Yes.
Don't wait till where you're arrived. You're never going to arrive.
Yep.
Do it through the process. It is a process. This whole time is a process.
Like even if your experience is down here, push stuff up here and then just keep going. You don't have to like get your experience all the way up here before you try anything.
Yep.
Do it this way. Get out over your skis a little bit. You know, if you're feeling a little uncomfortable, you're probably about right.
Exactly. And the reality of it is most jobs that you're applying for, you know, they're asking for 5 years of experience. They're willing to take one. You know, if they're asking for 3 years of experience, they're willing to train you.
80% of the hiring managers and the recruiters that I came across with knew almost nothing about the Salesforce ecosystem. Some of them didn't even know that there was a certification program, let alone ask you if you're certified. They just, you know, all they're thinking is like, we have Salesforce. We got problems we need fixed. We need things that we want. We don't know anything about it. Like, hey, Steven, is this something you can do? Yeah, I can do it. All right, you're hired.
Oh, there's something else I want to mention too. The days of getting paid $80,000, $100,000 for being a brand new Salesforce admin are gone.
Well,
those days,
get a job.
You would exactly right, but you know, this isn't 2018. Those days are gone. You know, like we were talking about, just trying to get a job. You know, so people need to understand that for one, getting experience. I mean, let's go back in the days where our younger days. 20 years ago, when you're getting out of college, you're willing to accept a position getting paid $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
$30,000 a year, right? Because you just got out of college, you don't have any experience, so on and so forth. Think about the same way. Obviously, most people coming in the Salesforce ecosystem, they're somewhere in their mid-career level. Obviously, coming into a new career, I'm not saying go down that low, whatever. Whatever you find to be acceptable for you, that is sufficient. But don't think you're coming into a new career field saying, I want $100,000 a year.
Oh, no.
And then someone's going to be like, okay, yeah, no problem. Right? Because you have no experience.
That's certified with about a year and a half some experience, knows their way around, can probably, muddle their way through an implementation. I think probably around 50 to 70 in that range you can usually find those. But yeah. Oh, hey, it's 3 minutes after. So our show is to be an hour.
Well, when we get talking.
So who out-talked who? I think we're pretty 50-50.
Yeah, I'd say that we're pretty 50-50 too as well. And then I think we're all over the place. Yeah, that's sometimes I've learned to be able to keep that right. As we go off on rabbit trails, bring it back.
Yeah.
Right. But we'll have to definitely do this again. I greatly appreciate you for inviting me on your show, Jerry.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad you came on. So just to wrap things up, is there anything you want to add to our listeners?
I definitely appreciate being on here. I think that Salesforce is an incredible ecosystem. It is what you put into it. It's that simple. I mean, I like the phrase. I don't even know who said this. If you want to be an expert, put an hour every day. Put an hour every day. There is so many different niches in Salesforce.
Yep.
That find your niche. Do what you want to do, but it is what you put into it. It is that simple. If you can't find a job, it's because you can't find a job. And if you want a job, go out there and get it. It's just a matter of time.
That's how you got to do it. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to the JerryRigged podcast, where we talk about marketing, technology, business analytics, and of course, CRM and Salesforce and HubSpot. All those are part of the discussion. I want to thank Steven for being my guest today. You have a great day. Be safe out there and have a great week.
The JerryRigged podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or Google. Business technology for CEOs, managers, and business owners. We're here to deliver insights and strategies without the fluff. This is the JerryRigged podcast.